Hey everybody, Carl Hughes from Draft.dev here to talk to you today about coming up with great ideas for your technical content that resonate with software developers. So today I'm going to be going over the first part of how you create content that resonates with developers. I've written and spoken before about some of these other points, but today we're going to focus on coming up with good ideas. Now, naturally, the first question you might ask yourself is what makes a good quote unquote idea? And the answer is, of course, it depends. So it depends a lot on where you're trying to target people in your marketing funnel. So developers, when you're trying to reach them with content, they are either completely unaware of your product or they're already heavy users and you're trying to convert them into paid users. So if you're not familiar with the idea of a marketing funnel, you should read up on this. But the idea here is content can be directed at either the top of the funnel. That's people that are completely unaware of you. You're trying to just make them aware that you exist. You're just trying to capture some really high volume kind of traffic and just get a few people to read and understand what you do so that you can then maybe convert them down into interested users in the future. Middle of funnel traffic is usually when people are in the consideration phase. They're thinking about your tool versus another one. And bottom of funnel traffic is usually when they're already maybe trying it out and you're trying to convert them into a paid user, or you're trying to get them to upgrade or sell it to their boss or something like that. So it's important to understand where your bottlenecks in the funnel are at the moment before you start deciding on content ideas. But once you've said, okay, we know we need to create more top of funnel content because our ultimate bottleneck is we just need more awareness in general, or conversely, you've said, we know we need to create bottom of funnel content because we know people are aware of our product, but they're just not using it and converting like we'd like. Once you've decided where it is you need to focus, then you can get into coming up with specific ideas. So in today's talk, I'm going to be focused on how you come up with ideas at each stage of the funnel because that's really important. So the first one is developer-focused collateral. Now, developer collateral, blah, 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 can mean a lot of different things. It could be documentation. It could be tutorials that show developers how to use your product. It could be upgrade, sort of like feature pages that show the upgrade advantages. But you come up with ideas for developer collateral by talking to your support team, your sales team, to customers, to users, to free open source users, to people who haven't paid yet, to people who have paid yet. See what crossed them over the line. You listen to some of their common objections, challenges, and questions. In general, your developer collateral will supplement or be part of your documentation in some way. It can help overcome those common sales objections. It can convert your free trial into paid users, and often it can alleviate support requests, which is really great for lowering your costs. This is usually very bottom of funnel content, so you're not likely to get people who've never heard of your product in and converted just based on reading a blog post that shows them how to use your tool in some very specific way. But it could be great if you've already got good top and middle of funnel built and you're trying to just convert more leads over to paid users. Some examples of this, one we've done a number of articles on this topic with is a company called CodeCov, and they do code coverage testing. And so with CodeCov, you can link up whatever programming language or framework you have that you're running tests on and whatever CI/CD platform you have to automatically generate a code coverage report every time your CI/CD tool runs. So this is great, but the challenge for CodeCov is they have to cover tons of permutations of languages, CI/CD tools, etc. So what we do is we go in there and write a lot of tutorials around here's how to use CodeCov with, say, GitHub Actions and Python in this case, or another one on Scala and Jenkins, or Java and Jenkins, or C++ and GitHub Actions, or whatever. I mean, you can see how this could just go on forever and ever. So this helps stitch together ideas that are maybe in multiple places in the documentation into one single tutorial that can help people get over the finish line, show their team how CodeCov could work, and maybe convert to a paid plan. The next ideation strategy that I recommend to a lot of our clients is keyword research. So keyword research is usually very top of funnel focused. So unlike the developer collateral that we just talked about that is kind of based on people knowing what your product is and just getting into use cases, keyword research is more about asking yourself, what do people search for on Google that we could possibly rank for so we could get into the first page of and get some traffic that people are looking for? In most cases, this is not your brand name. I mean, you should definitely try to rank for your brand name, but usually if you're a small to mid-sized company, there's not thousands and thousands of people searching for your brand name that aren't finding it already. So what you want to do is look for terms that have high search volume, meaning thousands or hundreds of people at least are searching for those terms every month, and low difficulty to rank for, which means that there aren't a lot of really big competitors already writing good content on those areas. And then you want to create ideas for articles and pieces of content around those different keyword opportunities that you find. There's tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush that are really good for doing this and coming up doing this keyword research. You can also hire an agency that specializes in this. At Draft.dev, we do keyword research for a lot of our clients. It goes really well, but other clients do keyword research on their own, and that's totally fine too, because different companies have different needs at different stages. Now, the downside to this, you might think like, oh, great, we can bring in thousands of visitors that have never heard of our site before. We can get them into our world and sell them on something. Possibly, but more likely you're going to have to get them sort of built up to that point. So in other words, you're attracting top of funnel traffic. People are completely unaware of your tool. They may not be ready to buy at this moment. So for example, if you targeted a very broad term like CI/CD platforms in 2021 or something, people might be looking for CI/CD platforms, but if you're a very specific kind of CI/CD platform, say you only work on mobile or you only work with a certain programming language or something like that, you may or may not actually capture a lot of those visitors to be paid users right away. That said, it's still really good traffic and it's very relevant to what your sort of lower of the funnel, bottom of the funnel keywords would be. And so it's definitely worth going after some of those. This content is also really easy to give to external contributors in general. We work with this kind of content with a lot of our clients because we're an external contributor for them. You don't have to have a ton of brand knowledge or insider knowledge about your tool. You just have to understand how your tool might get connected to this keyword. We've done this with a lot of our clients, like I said. One of them that comes up a lot is Earthly. So Earthly is basically an alternative to Makefiles. It's just one way to put it. That's a really simplified view of what they do. But they're an alternative to Makefiles. And so it makes sense for Earthly to rank really well for things like Python Makefile. And when people look for Python Makefile, they find this really great tutorial we wrote about how to create a Python Makefile for Earthly. And then we introduce Earthly towards the end of the article when people are saying, man, this is a lot of work to create a Python Makefile. Maybe Earthly is a better solution. So this is great top of funnel traffic, building awareness. At least next time someone's creating a Makefile, they might think, hey, Earthly, that might be something I try. Okay, next ideation strategy is getting input from your community or going and seeking out community input. And obviously you've got any kind of like input forms on your site that allow community members to give their feedback. That's great. But a lot of small to mid-sized companies maybe don't get a ton of responses on those. And so what we generally recommend you do is go out to places like Stack Overflow, Reddit, Hacker News, wherever developers are congregating and talking about potentially your product, but maybe also products that are related to yours or competitors of your product. Or maybe it's the kinds of problems that your tool actually solves for. So for example, if you go out to Stack Overflow and you see a lot of questions being asked around a certain kind of testing and your tool might help with, let's say it's acceptance testing, and your tool is an acceptance testing tool that makes it easier or better in certain cases, maybe those are good indicators of things you could write content about because people are already looking for and writing questions on Stack Overflow in that same vein. So you might be able to write some content that actually helps solve those problems. You might be able to even answer those Stack Overflow questions. So this is a great way to go out and find things that developers are already talking about. You can also use Slack channels. You can use Discord channels. You can use other forums. You could use conferences. When you go to conferences and talk to people, you kind of get feedback there. There's a lot of ways to get this kind of community input. Generally speaking, community input is going to get you top to middle of funnel traffic. In some cases, they might be talking about your product versus competitors, in which case maybe they're in that consideration phase in the middle. But in most cases, it's probably more general. They're just talking about like the broad space that you're in, and that can help you kind of come up with some ideas that are relevant to a developer audience without actually having to know a ton technically about what all those people are talking about necessarily. So this is great for less technical developer marketing teams. The example of this I have here is from Backhub. Backhub is a GitHub and Bitbucket backup platform, so you can make sure that you've got backups of all your repositories, so that in case GitHub or Bitbucket ever goes down, you've got a way to recover those and possibly restore back to a certain point in time. Now, we've done a lot of this kind of community-driven research to find topic ideas for backup. So for example, this one, 3 ways to back up a single file from Bitbucket. This is a common question that gets asked on Stack Overflow. It's got a lot of upvotes and views. So we know developers are out there looking for it, and so we write content around it. And this article does pretty well in search engine traffic that we wouldn't have really been able to find with a tool like Ahrefs because it's such a very specific long tail keyword, but it's really relevant to our client. So this is great for, again, middle of funnel traffic, top of funnel traffic. People may not be ready to buy your product right away, but it's a great way to introduce them. And the other challenge with this kind of this strategy for coming up with ideas is that it's a little hard to predict, unlike in keyword research's case. It's a little hard to predict how much traffic you're going to get. The nice thing about using a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush is once you actually dial it in and say you rank towards the top of the first page and you see that there are 1,000 or 2,000 searches a month, you can capture some percentage of those 1,000 to 2,000 searches a month. So it's actually pretty easy to tell how much traffic each article is going to generate you each month. In this case, though, community input, it can be a lot harder. So you get a little less precise, but at the same time, it's good to spread out some of the ways you're coming up with ideas. So you're not just a completely SEO driven content strategy. Okay, last but not least is projecting your worldview. Now, this is complicated. This is the hardest one to get external contributors to work on because it really needs to come internally from your founders, your leaders, your technical authorities, etc. This is often called thought leadership content. I call it your worldview because I think thought leadership is maybe a term that gets misused in some cases, but essentially the same idea here. What you want to do is pick a topic that you know a ton about and that you have maybe a strong opinion on, and then share your knowledge and experience with the world. This is a really good example from Fly.io. Their founder, Kurt, does a great job of writing these really long, detailed, deep dives into things related to DNS. And in this case, it's 32-bit IP addresses. Something I never thought I really cared to know about, and yet he wrote a really compelling article on the limited space of IPv4 addresses and how that's driving up the price of these IPv4 addresses and just the economics of it, and some really interesting stuff I, again, didn't think I was interested in. But it just shows his authority in the space. It shows how much he knows. It kind of builds trust with him, to be honest. Like, he runs this platform called Fly.io. It makes me think those people at Fly really know what they're talking about, which is great for them. And it's also really shareable. This is the kind of stuff that might go viral on Reddit. And I think in most of the cases, the things that Kurt writes tend to do really well in Hacker News as well. They attract completely new readers who never would have heard of Fly.io before. They get a lot of buzz. They can fill like your retargeting audience if you're doing retargeting ads. The downside is it's always really hard to connect these into your core product. So just because this goes kind of viral and thousands of developers read it over the course of a month, let's say, first of all, that traffic's a spike that's going to drop off pretty quickly because stuff that goes viral doesn't just kind of like stay high traffic, unlike search engine traffic. It's a spike and then a quick decline. The other downside is tens of thousands of developers, maybe some tiny percentage actually might be looking for a edge caching platform like Fly.io. So it's not a great way to get super targeted users, but it's a great way to build awareness and sort of the very initial top of funnel content when you can do this well. They are hard to pull off, like I mentioned, really hard to get external writers to do this stuff. I don't think I've met a ghostwriter or freelance writer who does a great job with these every single time. But if you're a founder, you're a engineering leader, you're someone a DevRel leader maybe, who has really strong opinions that mesh well with your target audience, you might be able to pull these off pretty regularly. Okay, so how do you choose which kind of content you should write and when? This is where the funnel comes back into play. And I like to use this quadrant to help guide people through how they should set up their mix, because I don't believe you want just one single kind of content. It's about hitting the right mix for where your needs are in the marketing funnel. Let's say you need top of funnel traffic and that's your primary directive right now. You're just like, we just want tens and hundreds of thousands of visitors this year. We don't care, at this point, maybe how much they convert. We're just going to try to, get the top of funnel full. We're going to maybe build up our email newsletter, and we're going to do a big product launch next year after we've got this huge audience already. Great. Focus on keyword research with top of funnel keywords that have lots of traffic and very little competition, and focus on displaying your worldview in a really spiky, crazy way that gets shared out with lots and lots of people. Let's say, on the other hand, you're maybe like, okay, we've got some top of funnel traffic and we need to start converting these people over into paid users. Let's start showing them what your product does. Get into some developer collateral, create some things based on community input, seeing what developers are already asking about, what they're wondering about out there on the internet related to your space, and try to convert some people over, build them into the consideration phase. So look at your funnel, understand where you need to create content in order to, unplug the bottlenecks you've got, and then go create the right kind of content and come up with the right ideas accordingly.